Good afternoon and welcome to this Uni Taster Tuesday event. My name is John. I'm hosting the event today from UniTasterDays, and we run these events every single Tuesday to support students with university guidance. So whether it's a general subject, like for example, today earlier on, we ran a session on personal statements, or a session like this one where we are exploring studying a particular subject at university, I really hope you find this event useful. And again, that's whether you're joining us live or watching back on the recording individually or as part of the school group. Just before I introduce this event, a big shout out in terms of our upcoming events and recordings to date. UniTasterDays.com/Tuesdays is the website that you'll need to book upcoming events and also access any recordings. So if you're watching this and you think you'd like to attend or watch other events, UniTasterDays.com/Tuesdays is a really useful website for you. A warm welcome to this event today where we're exploring university courses in fashion, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Jacoob Kimmie, who's joined us from the University of the Arts in London to run a session exploring university courses in fashion and careers, and really some great guidance for students that are interested in studying fashion at university. With that, I'm going to pass things straight over to Jacoob. This is Jacoob Kimmie joining us from the University of the Arts in London. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, as John says, to our Uni Taster Day today on this Tuesday, where we'll be discussing and talking about fashion, working in fashion, and how that connects to universities and studying the types of things you can expect. And yeah, a very exciting Tuesday, and I gather that this is the week when many of you probably have brothers and sisters going back to college and going back to school, and you are all starting to sort of like think about your own careers moving forward. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll have some more information about what it's like to work in the fashion industry and also how that connects to university. I think it'll be a whole lot easier for me to load my little presentation, and I'll speak about that within there. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly if I may. So as John has mentioned, my name is Jacoob Kimmie and I work at University of the Arts London. I'm based at London College of Fashion, and my role is an outreach practitioner, which means I work with students in preparing them for applying to university, which is a fantastic role. It really gives you the opportunity to meet lots of young people like yourself. Very, very briefly about my connection to fashion. I was born in South Africa, and when I was your age and even younger, I used to fantasize about working in the industry. And to cut a really long story short, I used to fantasize about working in fashion and working in London. And I started a label, and I'm speaking like more than 20 years ago. And then about five years ago, I did an MA at CSM, and this whole idea of working in fashion just came to life, and it really gave me insights into how it all happens in London and what universities in London are all about. So that's my background in fashion, having started a label and then working at universities to support younger people like yourselves getting into university. I am sure that so many of you see pictures and images on social media of all the very famous designers. So designers like when we ask students, very often they would tell us that the students they know about, the designers they know about are the big names like Alexander McQueen, excuse me, or Stella McCartney. And many of our boy design students, know the very trendy designers like Craig Green and Christopher Shannon. And I'm sure you see these amazing pictures on Instagram and on all the different social media, and these amazing garments they create. And you then sort of think about what used to happen, what used to be quite trendy with drops of trainers and clothes and all the collaborations, or as the young guys like yourself refer to them as the collabs. And everything from Louis Vuitton, etc., etc., etc. And I'm sure you see these amazing images and the buzz that it creates, this buzz, what it's like to work in the fashion industry. And more importantly, how that buzz is connected to actually earning a living working in the fashion industry. And on the screen, what we have on the screen, are some examples of that world, of the fashion world, and what it is like. And even there, some really amazing, exciting pictures of just what an important industry it is to the UK and the role that you can play in it in the future. I am sure that if you mention something like jobs in fashion, and I know this from experience, many parents get quite nervous because they think, oh, they see all the things in newspapers, and they're quite concerned about jobs in fashion. But hopefully, by the end of the session, I would like you guys to know a little bit more about, what the jobs are in fashion, how they connect to certain things that happens at universities, regardless of where you decide to study, and how all that connects to your path moving forward. So when you see those images on Instagram or on social media, essentially what you see, everything from the garment, the way it's been styled, the way it's photographed on a model or an influencer, falls into about 4 parts. And those 4 parts, if you look at the screen, is fashion design, it's technical fashion, it's fashion textiles, and the fashion media, the fashion business and communication side, which is essentially the side that you see in social media that's been advertised. What I want to do very quickly for you guys today is to tear this apart and to open them up so you can know and understand exactly what those different parts are. So if we go into the fashion design part, in the fashion design part, you've heard of roles like creative director. Very often, if you think about someone like Louis Vuitton, or if you think about Givenchy, someone like Riccardo Tisci used to be the creative director at Givenchy, and then he moved to Burberry. And then you think about someone like Abloh, who's at Louis Vuitton. They very often are referred to as creative directors. They also tend to be the fashion designers. So fashion designers are also people or people in the industry like Craig Green or Christopher Shannon. They designers or creative directors, and they all fall underneath the title of fashion design. Fashion design might also include things like shoe design and accessory design. So famous shoe designs like Jimmy Choo, for example, falls underneath the category of design. The next part, which is technical fashion, this is the part that's all about making fashion. It's the part of, the designer is involved in the design of the garment, but very often the designer isn't the person making the garment or making the look. And this is the part that I get quite excited about, because this is the part when parents think about jobs. This is where all the jobs are in fashion. It's the pattern makers. They're the guys who make a mock-up or a trial garment, and they first make the pattern on paper, and they test it over and over and over again until it meets the vision of the designer, the creative director, who then looks in onto what's been happening. The garment technician are they form part, or the technicians form part of the team who actually stitches the garment together. A garment technician can be someone who makes concept clothes. So when you see those really crazy fashions on Instagram, like the outrageous things that you don't necessarily wear, even that forms part of the garment technician part. So garment technician, pattern makers, for a long time, because fashion became such a big explosive thing, was seen as the boring parts of fashion design. But at the end of the day, have you ever wondered who the person is at Alexander McQueen that stitches all those amazing garments together? Or who's the person at Elie Saab that makes those beautiful beaded garments? This is the part that forms that part of fashion, technical fashion. So people like garment technicians, seamstresses, pattern makers, all involved in the technical aspects of making fashion. And I want you to remember that that is where the jobs are in fashion. In the fashion textiles part, I often like to think of fashion textiles as being the art part of fashion. Very often I hear from students that they love fashion, they might even love design, they might even love making things, but where their passion is at is in making textiles. And textiles really forms the backbone of fashion. It's the starting point in many cases. Sometimes when you watch a documentary and you watch a designer talk about their fashion, very often they're playing with cloth, or they might go into a market, or they might go into a store, or they might look at a photograph of flowers, or they might be drawing something. And the very idea is about turning that into cloth, because fashion, on a very basic level, is made from cloth. It's the cloth that gives the garment its shape, that gives the garment its aesthetic. And textile design, a really, really important and a really fundamental part of fashion design, because without amazing cloth, you don't have amazing design. And very interestingly, I was having a conversation with some of my colleagues at St. Martin's. Textile design is becoming very, very, very sexy again to explore as a career option. And textile design includes things like pleaters, dyeing, embroiderers, fabric print, all those amazing types of things that that some of you might be doing at school. So remember that, well, this is my opinion, that textile design is like the art part of fashion. It's about the cloth that designers use. In fashion media, business and communication is a massive part of the success of fashion. Without this part, you don't have the images that we fall in love with on Instagram or on social media or even on TikTok. Apparently, TikTok's becoming a very, very important part in the way designers want to market fashion. And again, you can see on the top there, creative director pops up. And the creative director, when they go into somewhere like Chanel or when they're into like Burberry or into those big designer houses, they essentially direct everything. They would go so far as restyling what the boutique looks like, or they would reshoot perfume bottles or reshoot perfume campaigns to sort of like all be brought underneath the way they see things. So if you think about perfume ads that you might sort of see at Christmas, and we're heading towards that time now when they're advertising perfumes from all the big designer houses, very often the creative director that might even be the designer is essentially the person directing all those things, the imagery. What does that look like for the House of Dior? What an amazing job to have. We have photographers that play such an essential part in creating those images. So if you think about recent exhibitions at the V&A, we had the Walk exhibition, and it showed his aesthetic and how he photographs for Vogue, and it's a very, very fairy tale approach. So photographers play a significant part in creating those fashion images that you and I see. Stylists and hair and makeup artists, I mean, that's self-explanatory. It says exactly what it is on the term. Stylists have become very important in the industry because they essentially work with the creative director. So a creative director or designer might call in a stylist, and the stylist will be the person that creates the fashion show. They edit the fashion show. So if you think, I can think of someone like Katie Grant, and Katie Grant is a really, really important stylist, and Katie Grant apparently can demand something like £1,000 a day for her input in fashion. She works with Prada. She'll work with Prada, and she'll she'll consult with Prada and tell Prada it works or it doesn't work. What a fantastic job again to have. Buyers and merchandisers. If you are into high street fashion, these are the guys that make up, they decide what you see in the shop windows, what you buy at places like Topshop, for example. Press, fashion journalism, this whole idea of influencing people through images and through describing fashion to you and I. Then we have fashion psychologists. They actually start disseminating what our thinking is regarding fashion. Marketing, again, the things we see on social media, and management. Sometimes not very, very sexy for creative types, but someone's going to manage all of this at the end of the day. And fashion business, it's worth billions to the UK economy. Those are the guys with their fingers on the so-called calculators for fashion and the money it makes. So, that big decision, we come to sort of like things about fashion degrees. What do you study for all these different roles and parts in fashion? I'm hoping, again, like I said earlier, that the information I'm giving you will give you some idea and things for you to start thinking about in how this all works in terms of education. So again, if you can just remember back to what we spoke about, if you are really into design, the types of degrees you have available at many, many universities are quite similar. It all just depends on where you decide you want to go to in the future. But essentially, the way I've broken it up here is how these different degrees fit into those 4 disciplines that I've identified earlier. So if you're into design, the types of degrees you might want to explore includes degrees like women's wear or menswear. We even have sportswear design. Contour design will pop up when you're doing your research, when you're starting to explore different universities. Contour design is this idea of designing underwear and things like swimwear. I had a conversation with a contour design course leader, and she says some people start in contour design and they actually end up designing wedding dresses, because wedding dresses are all about the foundation garments. We have shoe design in there, accessories design, and even costume design. So anything that's got to do with initial concepts and research, and you being at the starting point, the starting vision in fashion with design, those are the types of degrees you should be looking at different universities and depending on where you want to study. In technical fashion, if you enjoy things like making patterns or working out how a garment is put together, very importantly, if you are considering wanting a job in fashion and you're really, really keen on working for a big fashion company, whether it's sort of like a big couture house or a heritage brand like Burberry, and I can assure you there are loads of jobs in those departments, these are the types of degrees you should be exploring: pattern making, bespoke tailoring, design development. Again, I can say to you that if you were applying for something like work experience at a big design house, and if you mention that you can do these things, I can also assure you that you'll be given a work experience place. Really important degrees to have: pattern making, bespoke tailoring, and design development. In fashion textiles, we have everything from textile design in terms of print, that's designing prints for fabric, that's in knit and embroidery. Such exciting parts, again, to work in fashion and textile design. And in fashion media, which is so incredibly vast, again, we have everything from creative direction, degrees in creative direction, to photography, to illustration. Again, illustration, one of those amazing fashion arts, with the advent of technology and cameras, in many ways, photography replaced illustration, because in the past, fashion photographers of the past relied on illustration to tell stories in fashion. But again, illustration is becoming this big thing in fashion again. People want to see the art in fashion. We have degrees in styling, we have degrees in makeup and hair, we even have degrees in prosthetics. So again, depending on the university you decide to go on to and explore, look out for these types of degrees. We have degrees in fashion business and degrees in fashion communication. Communication is the part like fashion PR. They're the guys that if you are a fashion designer, you do your collection, everything is done, you then hand your collection over to the PR company, and they are the middleman, and they talk to press. They sometimes speak to buyers, they speak to showrooms, so they handle that part. Really, really important parts of the fashion industry. And this part really is based on what you want to do in fashion, what your interests are, what you are good at, and what you need to reflect on moving forward in the future. What can you expect on a fashion course? That's such a big question. And I think with anything with fashion, where it's got to do with things like design or making, the very first thing is there's going to be lots of hands-on practical work, whether that's anything from fashion design to pattern making to textiles. It's very, very art focused. Because it's a degree, there'll be lots of drawing. One of the big questions that always pop up, is, do you need to be able to draw to access or to sort of do a fashion course? The answer to that is both yes and no. Some courses at university is very driven by using digital artwork. In some other courses, it's very much focused around concept drawing. Again, you've got to find these things out when you apply to universities. I want to give you a tip regarding that, if you are applying to a college in future, very often extended diplomas are very much about you, are very much about you learning those things in anticipation of going to university. So when you're at college, pay special attention to all those art subjects where you're required to draw lineups and draw things. That is your experience that you are putting together for a portfolio for when you apply to university. Fashion theory, very, very important. Why do we need fashion? What inspires fashion? Where's fashion going to? Very important part of university courses. Almost in every single part, you'll have fashion theory. And again, even in fashion business, you'll be learning about where fashion business actually started, where it's moving to, and predict things. Very important part. At university, you can expect to have work placements, both locally and internationally. I had a student about 6 years ago, and she called me up one day and she said, Jacoob, I can't decide whether I should go to Balenciaga or to Givenchy for my work placement. And I thought, oh my God, that's so amazing. You can't decide between those two because they had been offered to her. So again, university courses give you the opportunity to access those bigger design companies, whether it's high street work that you are interested in, or the top of the range design companies you are interested in. Again, this is all related to the universities you apply to and the links that they have with industry, which brings us to the next point. Very often, the universities you apply to have links to certain parts of the industry. You might find that certain universities have links to certain designers. And again, I don't want to give you too much information on that because it will just confuse you, but you'll start finding out that certain designers work with certain universities. So do your research in that part. At university, you'll be creating a portfolio, and that portfolio is your passport into work. In future, when you interview for a job, you would be asked to bring a portfolio with you. And with things changing all the time, portfolios are both in terms of actual like A2 or A3 or A4 portfolios. They might include digital portfolios. The whole digital thing has made this so much easier. You'll just be asked to send a portfolio off. Some of you that might be with us this afternoon, might be applying to university already. And when UCAS comes, they ask for digital portfolios. So everything at university is about portfolio creation. Very excitingly, at the end of certain years, you might have exhibitions or fashion shows, and your work is shown to the industry. And which brings us to something like Graduate Fashion Week. And Graduate Fashion Week is this massive fashion week. I think it happens in June, when the universities select their top work and it's sort of like shown to the industry. And the industry is invited to look at work and to actually handpick the people that they want to have work with them. And finally, coming towards the end, application tips and advice. Your portfolio is everything. Your portfolio tells the university, exactly what you are about. Your portfolio should be contemporary. Contemporary means your portfolio should be about now. All those things you see on social media, you're the conduit, you are the filter on how you take those images and translate them into your own personal portfolio. Really, really important thing. So when applying to university, be absolutely certain, ask questions, speak to course leaders. What are you expecting to see in my portfolio? If you are interested in applying for something like underwear design, you should be having a portfolio where at least 2 out of those 3 to 4 projects is related to underwear design. If you're sort of like applying for something like fashion textiles, and you are really, really keen about something like embroidery, your work needs to include embroidery samples. That's really, really important. And the way you get around all of that is by finding out exactly what's required in the portfolio. That's really important. Another important tip is that when you go for an interview, know what you are speaking about. Do some research. Find out about something that's happened recently that's really affecting fashion. For an example, we had the COVID pandemic happening. We then had the BLM movement happening. All those things have profound influences and profound effects on what's happening in fashion. And something as basic as Business of Fashion. I shouldn't be punting them on here, but Business of Fashion has all this amazing information. And if you're a student, I think you're actually able to access them for free. Find out these things so that when you are having an interview, you can speak about these things, because that gives a university or a fashion course leader insight that to some extent what you are speaking about and what you want to do at university. And then the third most important tip is, this is fashion. It's something that's meant to be enjoyed, and it's something that is so exciting. I often say to my students, it's not, dare I say that I should say, it's not science or geography. It's this idea of creating something that's art to be worn, whether your fascination is for high street fashion or for more conceptual fashion. It's meant to be enjoyed. And I'd like to end off with a saying by Alexander McQueen. And I don't know if some of you might have watched the documentary, that when he was working at Givenchy as their creative director, and he was quite young when he was there, and the seamstress in that really old-fashioned Parisian sort of like atelier setting in their workshops had spent hours creating a dress. And he came in there and he said, and he just cut the dress off. And the seamstress was really sort of like astounded. She was amazed. She was horrified, and she grabbed her mouth. And he looked at her and he said, "It's only a dress." And with that tip, I want to leave it there. And so I hope I've sort of given you all the information for this afternoon regarding what it's like to work in the fashion industry, how that links up to certain degrees and to certain types of degrees, and good tips for applying.